Well, the Most High be praised today. We're grateful for this opportunity to be able to provide teaching today. We welcome each one to School of Messiah Bible Institute. And today we're going to be looking at the subject of paganism. As we look at this is a multi-part subject. So today we're just going to look at part 1 of paganism. And as we get into this particular subject, there are some things we're going to identify here that I believe are very important as it relates to the things that are at work in our world today. And I believe that understanding paganism is very, very essential to being able to see how the enemy, Hasatan, is at work in the world, and how also the prophetic plan of the Most High is at work to come against this system that has originated in the mind of Hasatan. So let's pray as we begin to get into this lesson. Father in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity to be able to share in regards to this subject of paganism. I pray, Father, that you would give us an open ear and an open mind and an open heart to receive truth. May each student, each Talmudim, be open, and may they be receptive so that they might understand as what I will call the wiles of the devil. And as we learn, Abba Yah, help us to, by your Holy Spirit, put the puzzle together so that we can understand the way in which the enemy has designed his plan, and also that we might be able to understand and also be able to see the plan that you have ordained in the earth for your people. We thank you in the mighty name of Yahshua. Amen. So, as we look at this subject of paganism, we want to define the term paganism. It's a term that has been used by many, primarily to refer to the religions of the non-Hebraic peoples of the world. That's primarily the way in which the term is used. But I do want to give a definition of it so that we can understand where it comes from, and then the meaning that has developed from its use. So paganism is derived from the word pagan. And the word pagan literally means a country dweller. So it refers to somebody who dwells in the country. And so it is associated with other terms, such as heathen and Gentile. Gentile is with respect to people who are of other nations and that are not a part of the people or the nation of Israel. So from a biblical point of view, these terms refer to non-Hebraic ethnic groups. So paganism has come to typically be used to refer to all non-Hebraic indigenous polytheistic religious systems and traditions. That's what paganism refers to. So, we want to get a biblical definition. And the biblical definition is revealed in Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 24. So let's go read that passage. Let's read that. Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 24. Get it up, the 18th verse of Romans chapter 1. For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from heaven against all impiety and wickedness of those who by their wickedness suppress the truth. For what can be known about Elohim is plain to them, because Elohim has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, having been understood and seen through the things he has made. So they are without excuse. For though they knew Elohim, they did not honor him as Elohim or gave thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their senseless minds were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal Elohim for images resembling a mortal human being, or birds, or four-footed animals, or reptiles. Verse 24. Therefore Elohim gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, and to the degrading of their bodies among themselves. So here in these verses, what we see is the Apostle Paul giving a description of mankind at a place in history where they had once knew Elohim. They had a revelation of his creation. They had a revelation of his eternal power. It teaches us that they were able to understand his ways, it says, through the things that he made. So it was already a known thing that Elohim existed, that he was the creator of all things, that he, while being invisible, yet manifested his power. And it also tells us that they knew Elohim. Then it also tells us that they made a decision. They made a decision to corrupt the truth and to begin to practice forms of worship that entailed making images, idols that look like human beings, animals, and other things. It says here in verse 21, just so that I can clarify it, it says, "For though they knew Elohim, they did not honor him as Elohim or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking. They began to change their way of seeing things." And it says that their senseless minds were darkened. And they claimed to be wise in themselves, thus becoming fools. And what they did was took the glory of the eternal and exchanged it for images. So here's a description of the beginnings of the pagan system as Paul is describing it. Now, Paul does not identify the time period in which this took place in particular, but we know that it was sometime not that far separated from when man was created. Because notice what it says in the text, verse 20. It says, "Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power, divine nature, invisible though it was," it says, since the creation of the world, they knew. So there was a time since the creation of the world where after a period of time, men began to follow a different pattern. And I also want to note what's stated in the 18th verse, the latter part of the 18th verse. It says that by their wickedness, of those who by their wickedness suppressed the truth. So when did this happen? Now, I'm going to just share some information about a time period which was around about the time of Enoch, and from Enoch's period up until the time of Noah. That time frame is a very significant time frame as it relates to the development of what we call paganism, and what the Apostle Paul describes as how man became degenerate and wicked, where he began to turn from the worship of the Creator to the worship of himself and angels and animals and other things. During the time of Enoch, we're told from the book of Enoch that there were angels that came down from the heavens who were responsible to be watchers over men, who were to be responsible to teach men the way of Elohim, or shall I say to keep them in the way of Elohim. But what they chose to do was to make a covenant among themselves and to take wives of the human family, and in doing that, they produced giants. Not only did they produce giants according to the book of Enoch, but also they corrupted man by teaching man all forms of immorality. They taught man how to perform various types of sexual immorality. They taught man how to perform enchantments, which is a part of sorcery, or what we may call witchcraft. They taught man root workings. They taught him astrology and many other things. And in the midst of all of that, man began to worship these angels that took upon human form. and the whole system of image worship, where you have images that are made and human beings bowing down in worship to these images, were now becoming the norm for mankind. So as a result of these angels corrupting men, it caused Elohim to decide to destroy mankind. And the only one that was not destroyed was Noah. Scripture says that he found grace in the sight of Elohim. So Noah and his family, which were a total of 8 people, were delivered from the flood, which was used to destroy everything that was alive on the earth. And once that had taken place, and Noah and his sons began to repopulate the earth, there was a resurfacing of this whole religious system that had been introduced by these angels. So the purpose for us reading Romans 1, 8 through 24 is to lay a foundation as to the origins of what we call paganism. This is where it all began. This is where it started, where men changed the truth, turned it into a lie, and worshiped and served the creature or the creation instead of the Creator. Very important that we understand that. So I want to note some things here that are associated with paganism. Paganism can also be known as the world system. And I would venture to say that paganism is a part of the world system instead of it just being the world system. Because paganism primarily has to do with the religious system that exists in the world, and that religious system that drives or causes men to follow after and to worship things other than the Most High, the Creator. Worshiping the creation instead of the Creator. Everything that the Creator made, Paul talked about angel worship, human being worship, animal worship, sun, moon, stars, you name it. It has to do with the worship of the creation instead of the Creator. So this is very important. Also, what we need to note about paganism is that it is a system of confusion to pervert the plan of Elohim for humankind. It is also a counterfeit. It is a counterfeit, I'll say it again, it is a counterfeit system designed to draw mankind away from the Most High. So this is very important, that paganism and its purpose is to draw men away from the Most High. So this system that we're discussing, that we're talking about paganism, it is the tool that the enemy uses, that Hasatan uses, to draw men away from Elohim. Just as Elohim has a plan, has a kingdom, has a purpose, has a people that he uses to bring about the redemption for mankind. Hasatan has a system of his own to bring about the destruction and to deter men from following the Almighty. So we need to know, as we preface this, that there are two opposing systems in the earth. First one is the kingdom of Elohim, which we talked about and discussed in a number of lessons. And then there's the kingdom of darkness, the kingdom of Hasatan. So there are two opposing systems that are at work in the earth. And human beings are in one of these two kingdoms. And you're either in this kingdom by, how would I say, by conversion or default. You're in the kingdom of Elohim because you have converted, because you have come to the Messiah Yeshua, and you're brought into the family of the Most High, or you are in the kingdom of darkness. Now, most people are in the kingdom of darkness and don't even know they're in the kingdom of darkness, because by their own volition, by their own will, they have decided to do their own thing. So even if you have not purposed to follow Hasatan, if you are not following the Messiah Yeshua, then by default you are a part of the kingdom of darkness. So only two kingdoms. So let's talk about the kingdom of darkness. It's important that we have an understanding of it so that we can identify it. Let's go to Acts chapter 26, verse 18. Acts chapter 26, verse 18. And this is just a reference to the kingdom of darkness. There are associated references. Power of Satan is a reference that refers to the kingdom of darkness. In the 18th verse, it says, to open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan to Elohim, so that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me. So there's a statement made with reference to the power of Satan. When people are being delivered, they are being delivered from the power of Satan, or the authority, the kingdom, the dominion of Satan. This is very important that we understand this, because there are many who do not understand the fact that if they are not in the Messiah, then they are under the power of Satan by default. What does that mean? Does that mean that everybody who is not a believer is demon possessed? No, it doesn't mean that. But what it means is that because you don't have the mind of Yeshua, that your thinking, your philosophy of life, your view of the world around you is influenced by the powers of the demonic kingdom. And so a person, when they are delivered from sin, just as the scripture says, it refers to their eyes being opened so that they may turn from darkness, it says, to light, from the power of Satan to Elohim. So we need to be mindful of that. So there is a kingdom of darkness. This is one particular phrase that refers to the kingdom of darkness, power of Satan. Then in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2, it talks about the power of the air, the authority of the air, that Satan is the prince of the power of the air. So let's go to that. I just want to touch on that real quickly. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2. And in it says, and I'll read from verse 1 into verse 2, it says, "You were dead through the trespasses and sins in which you once lived, following the course of this world, following the ruler of the power of the air." So it talks about the ruler of the power of the air. Now, something that I need to know about this word power. And we see how it has the power of Satan and the power of the air. This word power comes from a Greek word called exousia. This word exousia means authority. It has to do with the idea of a legal authority. So when this term is used, it's used with reference to a diplomat, a governing official having legal authority to act and do and perform. So when it talks about the power of Satan, it's talking about the authority of Satan. It's dealing with the fact that Hasatan has usurped authority. He has developed a kingdom, a dominion, where he has authority. And that's what it's talking about. When it's talking about the power of Satan, talking about the authority of Satan, or the authority of the air. It's talking about a sphere where he has taken legal authority over a region. So there is a dominion, a kingdom that's at work. And there's another phrase that's used referring to the kingdom of darkness, and it's called the power of darkness. That's in Colossians chapter 1, verse 13. So these three phrases, the power of Satan, power of the air, power of darkness, all refer to the authority of Satan, authority of the air, and the authority of darkness. These are all with reference to a dominion, a kingdom that Hasatan has developed and has taken charge over. So there is a kingdom of darkness that exists, ruled by Satan. Ephesians chapter 2, where we read, it said, following the ruler of the authority of the air. So Hasatan is the ruler of the authority of the air, based upon Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2. Also, if you look at John chapter 12, verse 31. John chapter 12, John chapter 12, verse 31. Listen. It says, "Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out." So who is the ruler? Satan, Hasatan. So we see that the kingdom of darkness is ruled by Hasatan. When we talked about the authority of Satan, the authority of the air, the authority of darkness, that is the sphere wherein Hasatan rules. He rules in the realm of the spirit, and he is regarded as the prince or the ruler of the power of the air. So this is where his kingdom is, in the realm of the spirit. But this spiritual realm where the demonic kingdom operates is transitioned, or I'll say manifested, in the visible world that we live in through human instrumentality. And that human instrumentality by which Hasatan operates is through the pagan religious system. That's the visible manifestation of the kingdom of darkness. And what we're going to do as we deal with the next two portions right here of this lesson, we're going to see that manifestation. So what we want to do right now, we want to talk about the origin of the pagan system. Now, I said something already in the preface about the origin of the pagan system, how it began with the angels that came down and cohabitated with women. We talked about what they did. That was the beginning of it. The Most High destroyed the earth, but the evidences of that religious system was still there. After the waters receded, you had all of these different places on the earth where you have these temples, you have these ziggurats, you have these pyramids that are all designed for sun worship. And we're going to go into the details of that, but I just wanted to kind of give us an idea. You had the evidences of all of that. And so when we look at the origins of the pagan system, the scriptures talk about a city called Babylon. Babylon. Because from Babylon is where we see the pagan system in its resurgence. Because from Babylon we see the pagan system spreading throughout the entire world. So, city of Babylon, if we go to Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9, it talks about Babylon. Let's go to go into the book of Genesis, Bereshit. Chapter 11. As soon as they get off the ark, and they're populating the world, they get right back into this pagan system. It comes back. It's revived. Beginning at the first verse, it says, "Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as they migrated from the east, they came upon a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, 'Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly.' And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, and its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, otherwise we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth.' And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which men had built. And Yahweh said, 'Look, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there, so that they will not understand one another's speech.' So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore it was called Babel, because there Yahuwah confused the language of all the earth, and from there Yahuwah scattered them over the face of all the earth. Now, what is significant about this? I mean, all we're told here is the fact that when they were in Babylon, that they built the city and they built a tower. All right? They built the city and built a tower with its top in the heavens. And they made it high so it can go into the sky. Chapter 11 doesn't talk about the details of paganism here. But for those who are not afraid to read other books, such as books like the Book of Yashar, the Book of Yashar, which, by the way, the Book of Yashar was used by our ancient fathers, and the Book of Joshua and the Book of Chronicles makes reference to the Book of Yashar. And so they were using those books in referring to different eras of history among mankind. It goes into detail about what was happening when they were in Babylon, the paganism, and the worship. There's also a lot of archaeological evidence that talks about the idolatrous system of worship of the sun that was going on, where Nimrod was, him and his wife was responsible for the reviving. I call it the reviving of paganism. Others might say the developing of paganism. I call it the revival of paganism because paganism actually started when the angels came down prior to the flood. Basically, Nimrod had took all of the information that was still available, and they revived this whole pagan religious system and began to continue it, so that when Elohim confounded the languages and separated the peoples, where there are different nations of people that are developing, the peoples that had the different languages took the same basic religious concepts, except they just had different names for it. The basic concepts of the pagan systems are sun worship, honoring the deity of the sun. All of it is based around what happens naturally in the earth, where you have your seasons, you have your solstice times, your winter solstice, you have your springtime fertility celebrations, and you have your autumn season celebrations where the deity of death is worshipped. So, and I'm going to go into those details in some other lessons. We've covered this before, but we're just going over it again. But what we see here is that Babylon is the place where it was revived. And with this revival of paganism, Babylon now became known as the mother of harlots. It's interesting that that term is used with regard to Babylon. But let's go look at Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 5. Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 5. And this is important here. We look at Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 5. We see it says, "Then one of the seven angels who had seven bowls came and said to me, 'Come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore, who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. And on her head was written a name, Mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of whores and of earth's abominations. Now, here in this passage, it refers to Babylon as being the mother of whores or mother of harlots, which means that Babylon became the city that produced offspring like herself. So what we find here is that when Babylon was the first empire, I can use that term, the first empire after the flood that began to promote the system of paganism. That wasn't the only kingdom that was operating in the earth at that time. We need to understand that. But it was the first major kingdom and empire, I would say, that was operating and that promoted a system of worship that was unto the creation. Unto the sun, the moon, the stars, the angels, everything other than Elohim. Now, when we look at this in Revelation refers to Babylon. It's not referring to Babylon per se as a nation. And this is important that we understand when we read the scriptures. Because a lot of times we read the scriptures, we think of Babylon as being a nation. Or we think of Babylon as being just generally the world system. Okay, Babylon is in the world. Babylon has influence in and among the nations, but Babylon is not necessarily, so to speak, a nation. It is not a kingdom in the sense of a visible nation or kingdom of people. Because if you look in Revelations, notice what it says about this woman, okay? And we're going to read it. Verse 2 of chapter 17, it says, regarding this woman, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. So, it says the kings of the earth, the rulers of nations and countries have committed fornication. That means that the nations of the earth are in bed with Babylon. It's referring to Babylon as being specifically, this is important, specifically a religious system. When we talk about Babylon, and when the Bible refers to Babylon being the mother of harlots, it's not referring to a nation, it's referring to a religious system. Because this religious system is in bed with the nations. This religious system is on many waters in many countries. It's not one particular nation. It's a religious system. We have to understand that. Reason why I'm making this point and I'm being specific is because there are many who will say, with regard to certain nations in the world, all right, that display evidences of wickedness because of the immorality. You know, I've heard people say that America is Babylon, or Rome is Babylon. And no doubt, in the ancient time, Rome was associated with Babylon. I don't deny that truth. That's evident. But when the Bible speaks about Babylon, the mother of harlots, because Babylon is in bed with other nations, you see Babylon in other nations. Because Babylon is in bed with the nations. But when we identify who Babylon is not a specific nation. So for someone to say that America is Babylon, that would not be completely accurate. But you see Babylon in America, though. Let me clarify that. You know, yeah, Babylon is definitely in America because it's in bed with America, but Babylon is also in bed with England, and Babylon is also in bed with many other nations. Matter of fact, it says Babylon is in bed with all of the kings of the earth. That's what this scripture says, right? Okay? So when we identify Babylon, we got to understand Babylon is a religious system. And it is the religious system of paganism. And I'm making this point because we need to be able to understand how to identify Babylon and how to be able to know what she looks like. That's important. All right? You know, we talk about different nations and we try to attach the term Babylon to a particular nation because Babylon and the nation are in bed together. What we do, you can easily run the risk of not identifying things rightly. Now, the reason why I say that is because when you continue reading in Revelation, and it talks about the destruction of Babylon, it says that the beast kingdom, which will be composed of the kings of the earth, is going to destroy Babylon. All right? So it's important that we understand that. All right? It says the beast kingdom is going to destroy Babylon. Right? You read that in chapter 18 of the book of Revelation. It talks about the destruction of Babylon. Also, it talks about, tells the people of Elohim to come out of her, which we'll get into that. But when we talk about Babylon, we need to understand that Babylon is a religious system. Okay? That's important for us to understand. Babylon is not America. Okay? We need to clarify that. Babylon is not America. Babylon is in America because Babylon is in bed with America. America is one of the kings of the earth. Now, I don't have time to get into all of the evidences to show how America is in bed with Babylon. I'm not going to do all that. But if people want to know who America is according to the scriptures and Bible prophecy, I'll just give an indication. America is a part of those nations that are connected to what many will call the revived Roman Empire. America is a baby of England, and it is attached to the revived Roman Empire. So if you want to look at who the United States is with reference to the symbolism of Scripture and with reference to how it is set up, it is Rome. The Roman Edomite kingdom. That's who America is. And I'm not going to go into details about who America is because I'm dealing with paganism right now. But that's just for those who are saying that America is Babylon. I want to bring some clarity to that because when we deal with the scriptures, we need to understand and identify things properly. Because Babylon is going to be destroyed by the kingdoms of the earth that will be under the authority of the beast kingdom. All right? So that's important that we understand that. So, Babylon is referred to as the mother of harlots. It is the mother that spread idolatry throughout the whole world. That's what Babylon is. Babylon, the name Babylon means confusion. So this city, this religious system, its main purpose is to bring confusion and to confuse the truth of Elohim among the nations. That's its purpose. Another thing we're going to look at has to do with the spread of this pagan system. We know already from looking at Genesis chapter 11, verse 8, that when the Most High spread the peoples throughout the world, when he scattered the peoples throughout the world, they also took with them their pagan religious system. So those who are in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, those who are in India, those who migrated over into the areas of Northern Europe, you have the Celts in Northern Europe, you have Egyptology down in Egypt, you have Hinduism over in India, you have the religion of the Canaanites, and you have the religion of Babylon in Babylon, where you have the sun worship, the fertility worship through Ishtar. Ishtar is the Babylonian name for the fertility deity. You have these same aspects of worship that is practiced by all of these different peoples. They have different names for their deities, but they practice the same type of worship. And the Most High, he scattered them. Instead of them being in one location, he scattered them. And so we have paganism spread throughout the earth. Another way in which we know that paganism continued to spread, and he broke up the landmass. And he did it around about the same time when he had confounded the languages. If you read over in the scriptures, if you look at Genesis chapter 10, verse 25. In Genesis chapter 10, verse 25, it talks about that when a man by the name of Peleg was born, Peleg's name means division, because when he was born, that was the time when Elohim had divided the earth. That's what it says in the text. So the landmass, because the earth was all one landmass at one point in time, in the beginning. It was all one landmass. What Elohim did was he broke it up and spread it. That's why we have what we call continents today, because the Almighty had broke up the landmass. I'm just going to go to the scripture and read it just so you can hear it. Genesis chapter 10, verse 25, and then we're going to wrap this teaching up. Genesis chapter 10, verse 25, and it says, to Eber. Now, Eber is where we get the name Hebrew from. Everett. Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. So when Peleg was born, the Almighty broke up the landmass. And when you look at the generations of Ham's sons, and you look at the generation of Shem's sons, what you discover is that when Nimrod was born a generation before Peleg was born. Or in other words, he was born during the same era in which Eber was born. So when the Almighty chose to confound the languages, he also, during the same time period, broke up the landmass. Why? For the purpose of separating the people. So with that separation, you had this paganistic system. While people were speaking different languages, they had the same type of religious system that had spread to every continent of the earth. So that's important to know. So right here we have the foundation here of paganism. We see the fact that paganism is a manifestation of the demonic kingdom. Its purpose is to be a counterfeit, to bring confusion, to thwart humankind from the way of the Almighty. And it's all over the planet. In our next lesson, we'll go into detail about the pagan system. We'll deal with some of the common practices that identify the pagan system. And once we do that, there's going to be some things that I'm sure will probably surprise many, as to know that much of the celebrations that are associated with the pagan system are practiced by many who call themselves the believers in the Messiah. So we're going to close on that. Let us pray. Abba Yah, thank you for your mercies and your kindness today. I pray, Father, that you would cause this teaching to settle in the hearts and minds of each student. May they take this information, may they use it so that they can be able to identify the religious system of paganism that is operative in the earth today, to be able to identify it so that they may know how to serve you and to draw others out of those systems, that they might know and serve the true and the living Elohim. We thank you for this information and ask, Abba, that you would guide us as your servants, that we might perform your will in the earth. May you be glorified in the mighty name of Yahshua. Amen. Well, I trust that this teaching has been informative to those of you who are watching us by live stream. If you want to know more information about this on your own time and you want to do your own study, I'd like to invite you to go to our website at www.ncmmi.20m.com. You can go to the link called the Written Word Library. And at that link, we have a number of written resources that you can read that will give you more information about the subject of paganism, that I believe would help you to understand a little bit better. And as we are going to be continuing in the teaching and going more in depth and describing various aspects of paganism, I believe that the resources that we have available will get you prepared for what we will be teaching in the coming Sabbaths. So we thank the Almighty for each and every one of you. We do ask that you support the work with a donation. If you are able, you can go to the same website at www.ncmmi.20m.com and share a donation with us. Or you can share with us by Cash App, $NCMMI. We thank you so much for your gift in advance if you're able to share with us. But most of all, pray for us that we may be a viable source of bringing the word of Elohim to the nations. The Most High bless you. Shalom.